So far, 1.4 million Floridians are out of work. That is according to the state's unemployment website. It's forcing many to file for benefits that some criticize are not nearly enough. The unemployment website has been plagued with problems.
At the beginning of the coronavirus crisis, some Floridians say they weren't even able to get onto the site. CBS 4's Jim DeFede joins us live with the exclusive details. And Jim, what's the governor telling you?
So last night we talked about how the state's $275 unemployment benefit is one of the worst in the country. But as you said, even before people could even qualify for that, they had to be able to sign up. And the sign-up process was horrific. We remember those terrible stories we were hearing about the state website and people having to stand in lines to get paper applications because they couldn't file with them. Well, I asked the governor whether or not he's going to sue as a result of getting back the $77 million the state spent just 5 or 6 years ago to build that site. And he had a lot to say about it and something incredibly revealing. Here, take a
from the end of fourth week of March through most of April, we were in really dire straits with that system. So I do think we should get the results of the IG, and then if there needs to be some type of suit or some type of accountability, we absolutely need to do it. I mean, my thing is like a lot of these unemployment systems throughout the country, weren't very good, but a lot of them were like 40, 50 years old. Ours wasn't really old. I mean, ours was really 5, 6 years ago, and it should have been done better for that price tag to produce better results.
Do you believe that the system was in part put together the way it was to discourage people from being able to collect unemployment?
I think that was the animating philosophy. I mean, having studied how it was internally constructed, I think the goal was, for whoever designed it, was let's put as many kind of pointless roadblocks along the way so people just say, oh, the hell with it, I'm not going to do that. And for me, let's decide on what the benefit is and let's get it out as efficiently as possible. We shouldn't necessarily do these roadblocks to do it. So we have cleared a lot of those, and I waived a lot of requirements through executive order. But I think going forward, I want all our systems, including unemployment, to be user friendly, and it was not user friendly.
Well, that system was designed and implemented during the Rick Scott administration. Do you think that was Rick Scott's intention, was to discourage people from applying for benefits?
I'm not sure if it was his, but I think definitely in terms of how it was internally constructed, it was definitely done in a way to lead to the least number of claims being paid out.
Now, there was an audit that came out in 2019, I believe, that pointed out many of the flaws. Should you be held responsible for not having acted on that audit and corrected this system?
Well, so that was an audit that was given to the agency head. Nothing ever reached my desk. I was not asked to do anything. I wasn't asked to seek more funding from the legislature. If I was, I probably would have done it. But I looked at that audit, and honestly, that does not answer really the systemic flaws that was evinced with this thing. And so even if those things were done, and they should have been done by the agency, we still would have had the same problems.
Lauren, Carly, I want to just sort of emphasize what the governor of Florida has just admitted. He is saying that website was set up to deny Floridians who qualified for unemployment benefits the ability to be able to receive them by making the system so difficult, so hard, so labyrinthine that people would just give up rather than get the money that was owed to them. I'm telling you, that floored me. The governor has never said this. Now, of course, he's trying to blame the previous administration for it, but it is still an amazing recognition. And for the hundreds of thousands, millions of Floridians out there who experienced that pain of trying to go through this, to know that it was deliberately done to them, that the system was set up to hurt them, has to be, a little comfort. But at least it tells them that what they experienced wasn't their fault.
Jim, some really eye-opening information in that interview. Thank you.